It's time to focus on education. I mean, it's a bedrock. A lot of development can happen. And a lot of things can go wrong if you don't get it right with education. So today, we've got the Executive Secretary of TETFUND, Professor Solomon Bogoro, joining us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, you know,
Thank you.
All right. Education is key. I mean, yes, there's been a lot of focus and highlight about that. But in spite of all that TETFUND is doing, we still have challenges. So could you give us a picture? Where are we at the moment in terms of getting our education system, albeit the tertiary one, to the level where a lot of people can indeed say TETFUND is making an impact?
Thank you very much for that first question. And I'm happy to speak on this issue, coming a few days after the inauguration of the TETFUND R&D Standing Committee on Thursday, precisely last week. And yes, there would always be challenges, but that's why some of us have been given responsibilities to address those challenges. And this particular engagement on your station is coming barely two and a half weeks after the University of Ibadan was rated among the top 500 universities in the world, the first of its type in this country. And we are hoping that more universities will come up. Let us reflect over, I think, just about 1.5 months ago, Mr. President, in sending a charge on the remaining about 3 years of his tenure, running up to 2023. He listed a number of priority issues to address. And the very first of all of them was quality education. Yes, we have been conscious of that, and we've been doing precisely what we need to do, those of us in the tertiary subsector, and especially from TETFUND, at a time we are talking about paradigm shift. Paradigm shift in terms of, yes, originally the ETF that is now in TETFUND was established to address mainly physical infrastructure that were in the first place virtually absent. And if they were in very poor state. So for a number of years, this has happened. And you would see physical infrastructure in many forms, whether it's lecture halls, libraries, Senate buildings, laboratories, equipped as they were. These have aimed to address the issue of quality. And I think going forward, we know that the rating and ranking of universities, which is a major reference to addressing the quality overall of education in a knowledge economy in the 21st century, dwells on quality of faculty. And this is why the paradigm shift at TETFUND aims at addressing what we call the content components. And research is virtually the first to refer to. Of course, the quality of libraries, of course, journals, manuscript development, academic staff training, I mean, addressing the needs of faculty members, and so on and so forth.
Well, how does this research and development body or part of TETFUND tie up with the functions of NERDC, which is also focused on research and development of the education sector in Nigeria?
Well, I can tell you that whatever we are doing is consistent with what other agencies are doing in this country. We are in touch. The Honorable Minister of Education has given us the freedom to liaise and partner, even sign MOUs, as it were, with other agencies. If it were a ministry, for instance, we've done that with Federal Ministry of Science and Tech, realizing that for too long, the education sector might not have reached out adequately to other ministries and sectors in partnership around the subject of research, and that for an economy as well as technology, you cannot operate as islands and expect to get results that address collective needs of the country. So if you take a look at the inauguration of the R&D Standing Committee last Thursday, you will see the galaxy of representations across the MDAs, particularly parastatal and specifically research institutes in various disciplines, as it were, various sectors. That is to say that we have never pretended that we could go it alone, but that this is the first time, with the approval of the Honorable Minister of Education, to proceed to do what Mr. President has directed, and that is in a knowledge economy in the 21st century. If you are not competitive, then you are not ready to move along with the rest of the world. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we've reached out at that committee that was inaugurated on Thursday. Virtually, you can go on the military. You saw DICON, for instance, Defense Research and Development Bureau. We can go on and on. The Space Science Administration, etc. We're all there. And of course, not to talk about the Policy Research Institute, including NIPS, NICER, and all that. From the STEM perspective, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, of course, talking about STI, science, technology, and innovation. The collection of these people, as never before, represents a new direction, a game changer in the context of the education ministry now going out to partner with others. Because whatever we've been doing, I put it this way in my address. I said, for too long, we academics have operated in isolation, but we could not continue that way, because the outcome of research, unless they solve problems, unless we're undertaking what I call problem-solving research, we're not addressing national issues. And we couldn't do that without reaching out to the industry. Right. And that is why there was heavy presence of industry. And believe me, as I'm talking to you now, I mean, nearly 24 hours, the subcommittees are working. And they are happy to do so. Nobody is leaving his or her seat, because, as the Honorable Minister put it, they have been called to national duty. This thing has to change. Check out there, the most competitive economies have all been around the issue of deepening, getting the education more qualitative through deepening of research, and specifically R&D.
Right, now let's talk about the mandate of TETFUND as it is. Well, the Act, the Establishing Act of TETFUND says your mandate is to rehabilitate, restore, and consolidate tertiary education in Nigeria. I mean, sounds clear enough. But when you look at tertiary education in the country as we are right now, in terms of the mandate of TETFUND, how would you say you have fared, and what are those challenges specifically?
Thank you very much. I love to recall what happened between 1990 and 92. After ASU was banned and unbanned, banned in 1988, unbanned in 1990 by the federal military government at that time, then ASU went into negotiation with federal government of that time for 2 years. And by the end of 1992, agreement was signed. And the ETF, Education Initially Tax Fund, later by 1998, the law changed, Trust Fund, ETF, was there. Monies were collected and utilized from 1998 up to 2011, when it was realized that the monies were used sparingly because a number of unintended beneficiaries came on board. And we recall that the basic subsector also benefited. And then policymakers had to be reminded that the basic subsector should not be benefiting from the ETF because they are officially funded through UBEC. And so it was important that they are removed so that the tertiary subsector will have more funds for its beneficiary institutions. In fact, like we've always said, a number of non-education sector institutions were benefiting. That was unacceptable. As soon as the law was amended to refocus to the original concept. That is tertiary institutions, public tertiary institutions, and specifically, as it were, by our law, universities, polytechnics, colleges of education. It is, you could see very clearly that there have been more manifest presence when the strike was on between 1990 to 92, leading to the agreement signed between government and ASU. ASU had said that Nigerian universities were glorified secondary schools. And the first reference was fiscal infrastructure. And massively, there was evident emergence of fiscal infrastructure between 1998 and 2011. But my God, take a look at the scenario from 2011 to now. It's been even more manifest. So
right, if I could jump in at that point then.
The joke out there is that
let me ask you, Prof.
So as well be referred
are you suggesting,
to as TETFUND universities,
I hope you can hear me, Prof.
College of Education.
Pardon me to just ask you this. Are you suggesting then that ASU has or will have no reason whatsoever to embark on strike because TETFUND is there to cater for the research needs of tertiary education?
Well, let me say this very clearly, that as a result of the performance of TETFUND, there has been much less frequency of strike over the years from the 2011 period when TETFUND came into being. And there is definitely no doubt, I mean, let's get it right, by the mandate of TETFUND, don't forget we are an intervention agency. As an intervention agency, we are not supposed to be the main funders. But now our funding intervention is so manifest that sometimes people think that the only money going to tertiary institutions should be from TETFUND. No. Of course, the personnel costs, recurrent funding comes mainly from the budgetary window. So there is no doubt about the fact that, yes, there have been some challenges that have led to issues of entitlements which are not the responsibility of TETFUND. But I think by and large, the much less frequent strikes that have been witnessed over the last 9 years or so, as it were, is a reflection, I believe, of the presence of the intervention of TETFUND. And we are hoping that with the paradigm shift, now putting more money on research and encouraging patents to come out of research, especially for science-based research outcomes, for uptake by industry. And then you have, the researcher getting personal benefit through royalties. I think I can assure you that there is likelihood of increased less restiveness in our campuses.
All right, just one moment. There was something you said earlier, and we're hoping that indeed this restiveness that you want to address would be addressed totally. But then when you say that strikes have reduced in universities because of the intervention of TETFUND, and of course you also kind of alluded to the fact that the recurrent expenditure is not part of the things that you fund, I'm wondering how TETFUND as an intervention agency has been able to intervene in the affairs of ASU with the universities or with government, because as you know, ASU is on strike at the moment. And if your intervention has been able to avert some of these, I'm wondering how come they're on strike now, if there was anything TETFUND could have done about it.
Thank you very much. We cannot take responsibilities that are not our own. I can tell you that whatever we need to do to contribute to either stopping the strikes, we have tried to do, but ours is not supposed to be manifest because it's not our responsibilities. The ministry is there, and there are regulatory agencies. ASU is an academic staff union of universities, and the regulatory agency is National Universities Commission. And whenever, as members of the negotiation team that TETFUND is, whatever has been required that we need to do to contribute to amicable resolution of these strike actions, we have always done. And I remain positive that all that is being done, many of them behind the scene, I have had moments outside official meetings to discuss with the Minister, Honorable Minister of Education, and I can tell you one thing, his personal disposition to unions has contributed many times in strike actions being called off, and I believe that this will continue to be the case, and we are hoping and we remain positive that it may not be much longer that these issues will be resolved. And
but we also
focus
remain
on what we know how best to do.
Right. Now, speaking of what you know how best to do, on a final note, the funds. Some institutions say maybe the process is too tedious for them to access these funds, and they're wondering what happens if they missed the funds for a particular year. Can they retrospectively access those funds? Is that possible?
Yeah, well, if they missed it for a particular year, I don't know what would be the circumstance for that to happen. But I can assure you that we have no reason to revoke the entitlement of any beneficiary institution. The Board of Trustees, that by law is vested with the responsibility of administering the utilization of the funds through the intervention lines, has no reason whatsoever to deny any institution. But then, because there have been occasionally, we've noticed some embarrassing challenges in terms of very bad practices, poor response to our guidelines. I can tell you in terms of guidelines, I am happy to say this, that TETFUND today is a model intervention agency because of its very robust guidelines in the implementation of its intervention projects. And what I mean by that is that the guidelines are very clear in terms of ensuring and even anticipating breaches. And one thing is very obvious, that we have, you go out there, we've seen cases where very sadly, if some either an institution or particular officials in an institution, it could even be lecturers, infringing on some of the intervention benefits, as it were, whether it's academic staff training and so on, conference attendance. Yes, I mean, that reminds me, only recently we had to suspend conference attendance because there were malpractices. The Board of Trustees decided to suspend and investigate. Investigation has started. Reports will be turned in. And in many cases, we discovered that a number of lecturers would travel, would take monies for international conferences and fail to travel. This is unacceptable. When these reports were brought to the Board of Trustees, it decided, let's undertake the investigation. When we clear the issues, maybe there are loopholes. Let's plug the loopholes and go forward. We want maximum benefit for the lecturers.
All right, then. So there are several other issues that we will have to touch on at a later date, but we do thank you for talking to us this morning. Professor Sulaiman Bogoro, Executive Secretary of TETFUND.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.